What the hell? I don't know what's going on.
Me neither. I'm here.
It's not letting me do the normal. So this looks kind of stupid. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Good morning, everybody. Sorry about the unprofessional start, but things like that happen. The morning show with ATV Talk, we really appreciate everybody being connected. Tell us in the comments what you think. We're going to be talking about UTVs here. We got to do a little bit of house cleaning first. We need to thank GBC Tires for all that they do in the industry, helping us bring you these shows. They have some new product coming, some things going on that we'll need to check out. So look for that here in the near future. Elka suspension leading the way in ATV suspension and also UTV suspension. So if you're needing some shocks for your machines, look up Elka and tires for GBC. DBR racing products, always a good source to find skid plates, Nerf bars, and other items for your race machine or your recreation machine. So check those guys out as well. Joe Tolle, how are you, sir? Thank you very much for joining today.
Oh, I'm good. I got a little bit of a cold. It might be a little nasally, a little sneezy. Might have to go run, blow my nose or something. I think I got a little cold from my trip to West Virginia for the Kawasaki Ridge press event.
How was that? You know, since you brought it up, why don't you give us a breakdown on what's going on?
We stayed right off with the Rock House Trailhead. I want to say the name of the place we stayed was the Appalachian Outpost. It was a cool facility. You know, we'd been past that area before with Kawasaki and saw the same place that we stayed, but X intro. But you know, this time it was for the Ridge, which for those who don't know what the Ridge is, that was the vehicle Kawasaki featured in their Super Bowl commercial, where everyone who was in the vehicle or on the trail next to the vehicle grow a mullet as soon as it drives past. Unfortunately, it didn't work for me. I still don't have hair. That was the one expectation for the vehicle where I was let down. It didn't grow my hair back. But whatever. But anyway, the Appalachian Outpost used to be a strip mall in the area, and family took it over and turned it into, I'm not sure what's in the main building there, but they put a restaurant in called the Broken Axle restaurant, and they built a number of cabins on site. And it's kind of weird. You know, you think if you're going to a place that has cabins, you're going to be like out in the woods, way off the beaten path. And I mean, this was kind of like not far from a main road. And the property is kind of in the middle of a valley. When you walk out of your cabin, you kind of look around. It's like everywhere you look, there's mountains on all sides. The cabins were really nice. Each one that I think they were all kind of the same. They had 3 bedrooms, 2 on the downstairs with a full bath. It had a full kitchen. Then there was a loft upstairs with another separate full bath. So, and we didn't have to share cabins. Every editor got his own cabin, which was kind of nice. They didn't need to do that. They could have stacked us 2 or 3 deep, and it would have been pretty comfortable. Yeah, it's a place. I hope other manufacturers utilize that facility just because the cabins were so nice. The immediate trailhead access to Rock House, which is a pretty well-known trail down there. I can't say enough about the people that ran it. The lady who runs the Broken Axle restaurant, she's the owner. her family, own the property, own the cabins that are there. Just very sweet people, very attentive. They've, been over backwards to keep our drinks full, bring us whatever we wanted to eat. Just a great group of people. I wouldn't hesitate to go there and stay and use that as a base camp for going down to Hatfield McCoy, where they are riding side by sides, ATVs. And, one thing I do want to credit the area for a lot outside of, the accommodations where we stayed is just the condition of the trails. We were there in side by sides. We came in on a Monday, we rode all day Tuesday and flew back home on a Wednesday. And I don't think we ran into one vehicle out there on the trails. So, middle of winter, early spring, if you want to go down there in the week and you don't want to deal with a lot of traffic, that's the time to do it. Or go early week, head down there on a Sunday night and stay through the week. Not a lot of traffic.
Where did they find this place?
I don't know where they found it. And you have to excuse me, I don't have notes, and my memory's, good and bad. Good with ATV history, bad with names and dates. So I don't remember the exact name of the town that it was in, but people who are familiar with the area, they kind of know where Rock House is if you've ridden down there. But if you want to know what the name of the town is, just look up Appalachian Outpost, Hatfield McCoy Trails, and you'll figure out where it's at. It's very good, nice, accessible to trails. There's even a gas station on the property. I forgot to mention that. So, you can eat there. They got a full bar. They got good food. They've got the cabins. There's a gas station right there on the property. So if you want to come in, fuel up, fuel up in the morning before you head out, it's all right there. You don't have to wander off far. It was a great time and great people. I love Southerners. I love their hospitality. But the trails, one thing, got to dance that fine line between the ATV editor job and the side-by-side editor job because they're not the same. It's two different groups of people. I'm an ATV guy who enjoys side-by-sides. Some of my test riders are side-by-side guys who enjoy or hate ATVs just because they think they're, too dangerous for them. And that's their personal judgment call. But as far as the ATV crowd goes, I mean, it's a great place for UTVs. If you're an ATV guy and you're like, man, I want to go somewhere and enjoy some riding, but my local trails are just jacked up from big ruts from the side-by-sides, the crew at Hatfield McCoy do a good job of keeping the trails in shape. I was eyeballing them the whole time thinking, man, I could bring my Raptor down here, throw some 21, 22 inch tires on it, some 22, 23 desert tires, plenty of ground clearance for everything we did. The ruts were minimum, almost non-existent. They do a good job of maintaining those trails. It would be a good place for a family outing, whether you're in a side-by-side or if you're an ATV group. So if you're looking for a place to ride that's pretty ATV friendly, trails are nice and wide, well groomed, I recommend it. I'd go back there with the Raptor any day and ride.
Well, that's awesome that we got a little shout out to the people that hosted you. Kawasaki put that on, didn't they?
Yes, it did. Yeah, it was their vehicle. I'll dig into it a bit. I don't want to go too far. They said we can make social media posts and things like that. Obviously, there's going to be some opinion that comes out in that. They don't want us to release our full editorial stories until, I believe, the 1st. I'll say the last day in February, just so maybe I get some other editors in trouble. But no, we can't. We can't post anything till the 1st. So that's when the whole shebang will be out. Might be another day or two for us to get ours out, because I've got a script done. It'll of course be a 15-minute long, in-depth, very detailed video. We're going to try to contrast the two units a little bit between one another, because Kawasaki has two versions of the Ridge. with numerous trim packages for each. And you have the Ridge, which is a 92 horsepower machine. You have the Ridge XR, which is 116 horsepower machine. Essentially, the suspension is the same, chassis is the same, power steering is the same. They use a little, there's a little difference as far as horsepower between the two units. The XR, which is the slightly sportier, I would say, version of the two, because it has more horsepower. It comes with a 30-inch tire versus a 27 that comes on the Ridge. Yeah, it was interesting. They're slightly different, but they're kind of the same.
David Ham in the comments wanted to know if you had to rank them from a 1 to 10, where would you put them? Or would you not want to get into that yet?
No, I will. I will. You know, what's interesting, Dave, is that they're kind of in their own category. And that's what I suspected heading into it is if, you know, just going into what you can see, you know, just looking at their website, the horsepower, you know, they're kind of, okay, let me back up. They're sort of in between the rec utility class, which in the rec utility class, you have machines like the Can-Am Defender, the Polaris Ranger. Obviously, these are 1,000cc machines, 999 cc machines. So they fit into that 1,000cc rec utility space as far as, you know, engine displacement. The biggest rec utility on the market is the Polaris Ranger XD 1500, which uses a 3-cylinder version of the engine that's used in the Pro R, which is a 4-cylinder 200. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. I want to say that's a 220 horsepower machine. 220 or 240. I've got a shootout coming up with the Maverick R. So if you look at the work capability of the Ridge, the specifications as far as towing, because they can tow up to 2,500 pounds, that's rec utility. If they can haul 1,000 pounds in the bed, that's in line with the rec utility segment. The Ridge and Ridge XR are both available with fully enclosed cabs, power windows, full HVAC. There's no crank window options with just a heater in these things. I mean, if you get the cabin closed versions, they are all season, all weather vehicles. And that was honestly my first time going on a press event or really testing one of them. So I kind of balked at them originally, but having experienced it, we can get more into that. So as far as specs go, they're very rec utility capable. Then on the other side, you start looking at suspension travel. You start looking at horsepower numbers. And you're kind of like, man, are they rec utility or are they sport utility? Because the Ranger and the Defender 1,000cc units are 82 horsepower machines. The Ridge, the not quite as sporty, but still a sporty machine, that's 92 horsepower. So you still have 10 horsepower more than the other machines in the rec utility class. And then in the XR, you have 116 horsepower. So the most powerful machine in the segment up until this point has been the Yamaha R-Max that won our sport utility shootout a couple of years ago. That's available on UTV On Demand website and YouTube. It's easier to find on YouTube. Just go there. So you got 8 horsepower more than the current class leading sport utility machine. So it's hard to answer Dave's question. I'm taking my time to do it. It's kind of hard to rate them in either segment alone because they're kind of in between. But what's neat was I kind of feel like they can play in both. Like they could compete in the rec utility class. We didn't get a chance to test their utility capability and see how they handle fully loaded against the other cars in that class. But the ratings all say they're just as capable. But then when you ride in them, it's kind of like they don't have that boaty feel that you kind of associate with the rec utility class. So there's a little bit more body roll. There's a little bit more, dive under braking and squatting under acceleration. It has a little slightly firmer, I wouldn't say stiff, because there were editors there who thought that, off the top on the small bumps, that these vehicles, had a little better off the top suspension performance than the RMAX. I think they can compete in either category. And I think what really makes the unit special for someone who's interested in them is when you move to the sport utility category, your tow weights go down to 2,000 pounds, which is still very respectable. But they go down to 2,000 pounds for the RMAX and the Commander. The General XP 1000 goes down to 1,800 or 1,500 pounds for the hitch. All of those units have 600-pound bed capacities, if memory serves me correctly, where this thing's 1,000. So for the guy who wants kind of that sport utility machine, but he doesn't want to make the sacrifice of a little less towing, a little less hauling, he wants that full capability of rec utility. These are machines that those guys are going to look at. They don't fit in one class. They have their foot in both, which I think is going to make them appealing to a lot more people. Because you remember, Lenny, in like 2008, the sport utility category the sports segment in ATVs was so crowded, and they were so good that it was kind of hard to come out at the time and build a better quad than the ones that were being built by, let's just say it, Honda, Yamaha, and Suzuki, and that took its toll. The usage of side-by-sides is so much more diverse than a sport ATV, and in ways even a utility ATV.
Joe, that's the question I'm trying to get in and ask. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you were on a good roll, but you were passing by the area where I wanted to ask a question. So when you start talking about the suspension in this unit, in the utility portion, am I sacrificing the way it's going to work when I'm working it, when I put weight on it, when I'm towing? Am I losing suspension for that environment because they make it better for the sporty portion?
I can't say, because we didn't test it. So I can't sit here and be like, oh, heck no way, absolutely not. But what I can say is that the rec utility machines, like I mentioned, they kind of have that boaty feeling. So they're kind of soft feeling. They're a little soft. They're very plush machines, whereas the sport utility machines are slightly firmer. And I feel like the suspension tune on these kind of leans a little bit more toward that sport utility segment. So being a little firmer feeling than what I've experienced previously in the rec utility class would lead me to think that, no, they're probably going to do just fine once they're loaded down, because they don't seem like they're starting out even quite as soft as the rec utility machines. One thing that's interesting about the shocks is the fact that when you move in the rec utility class, most all those machines, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but most of those machines are all like 5-way preload adjustable, kind of a basic shock. If you get into the sport utility class, and this is kind of like where that thing's kind of playing in between, when you move to the sport utility class, especially when you get, the Yamaha RMAX, they all come with reservoir shocks, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think you can get an RMAX without it, or even the Wolverine X2, which is a little bit more compact sport utility. The General XPs, they all have reservoir shocks. The Can-Am Commander, I know the XTP model we tested, which is the sportiest of the Commanders, it has, reservoirs, threaded preload adjustment. So in that sport utility class, they all have threaded preload pretty much, especially at the high trim packages, reservoirs, compression clickers. I don't think any of them have rebound, where the Kawasaki went for a more basic 5-way preload adjustable non-reservoir shock. And kind of made me wonder going into the day, like, are we going to be sacrificing ride quality? But I feel like they did a good job with the tune. One thing that's interesting about the Kawasaki, and we've seen Arctic Cat do it, and I don't think most editors think it's a win in the Arctic Cat line, is they don't have sway bars. And neither do these. And I was surprised going into the test to see that they didn't have sway bars on them. When I wrote my technical writing for the story before I went, I had a ton of questions, but I tried to do a lot of the technical writing before I even went to the event. And, you know, it was like, I just wrote in the technical stuff like, yeah, these have sway bars front and rear. I didn't see it in the specs, but I just assumed. And then I got there and it's like, there's no sway bars. And I was originally like, okay, these are going to be very boaty. But they weren't. Now, admittedly, the trails at Hatfield McCoy that we rode were not incredibly technical. When we did our sport utility shootout, where we tested at Haspin Acres in Laurel, Indiana, we were running a lot of steep trails, steep up and downs, very rutted out, very washed out, a ton of off-camber stuff. We didn't get to push these like that. Kawasaki led the ride. It was a decent pace. We lagged back a little bit and brap it, but for what we experienced on the trails and the pace that we ran, for these things to not have sway bars, they did good with the suspension tune.
That brings me up to a different question to change gears on you a bit, because you are more familiar with UTVs than I am. When we talk about the UTV recreational crowd, and you just talked about the technical trail riding, are most of our UTV people into the heavy technical trails versus the more moderate fun rides where the trails aren't as aggressive, that they're out there just enjoying each other and enjoying the trails themselves, that aren't too hard on their machines, that aren't too hard on them, instead of what I would call more the extremist guy that's looking for the hill climb or going to walk through the rocks.
That goes back.
Where are we at in the majorities?
I can't quantify that. I know that, just watch YouTube, and it goes back to my original statement about the diversity of the machines in side-by-sides, the diverse uses of side-by-sides. I think you have it all. I think you have some guys that, have a skill set, or they either have a skill set or they're just rich and they bought a machine and they have no idea what they're doing and they're going to go wad it up. But I think some people just enjoy going out, for that casual cruise on some decently groomed trails with just a little bit of challenging sections that make you want to stick it in four-wheel drive every now and then. Four-wheel drive was almost optional where we tested. I don't feel like we really needed it too much. We used it some just to try it. It pulls you through the corners a little bit better if you're getting aggressive. But I don't know. I think the uses are pretty diverse. I know a guy like me, as much as those things cost, if I was going to buy one, I would be buying it to take out my wife, and I wouldn't want to wreck a $30,000 machine or destroy it or scratch it all up. And
that's kind of where I was going with that, is because I know how bad of a UTV driver I am, and I'm not going to take my wife into real aggressive terrain because I don't have the maturity level to drive it sanely with a passenger or with her in there. My record proves that. But in the chat, 50 Magic said that on his RZR, he rides in the rocks in the mountains in Kentucky, and he removed the sway bars and the car works better for his application.
And people do that, that's something that some guys do. I think, like let's look at Yamaha R-Max. it's a brilliant machine. It's, I think, one of the best rock crawling side by sides on the market, even though it's in that sport utility segment. I'd compare it to other machines like the KRX 1000, which is a sport machine from Kawasaki. It's not the fastest push you back in your seat kind of sport machine. It's a brilliant rock crawler, but the RMAX doesn't have a rear sway bar from the factory, and it does have one on the front. And what you notice in the RMAX is that sway bar keeps that front end planted. It keeps it level. The back of that car tends to, and sorry for the guys who don't like to hear me say car, but it's a car, whatever, don't care.
It's a car.
It's a car, it's a truck. So, but the RMAX has no rear sway bar, and that thing is a brilliant rock crawler. Like, it's got 16 inches of rear wheel travel. So, you can be sitting here and like your back left tire is down in a rut that's 1.5 feet, 2 feet deep compared to where your right side rear tire is, and the back of that car is just sitting level. So I think, for the rock crawler guys who want to crawl up and down technical stuff, a lot of guys will take their sway bars off different vehicles and try it. I would like to hear his opinion on how it would handle in more flat, high-speed turns, because I have a feeling it's going to pick up some body roll. But
he's listening in the chat, so let's hopefully he'll answer that question for us so that we can talk about it. I want to ask you this other question. So if I need to do property maintenance and I'm going to tow a little trailer, maybe attach some tools to my unit, where would be the best utility vehicle for me to go with? I know that our sport chatsters are going to be like, "Oh, dude, we don't want to talk about this. Work is not fun." But okay, I'm going to get this machine. I'm going to work on my property, and then maybe I want to go play on the trails. But where would I go? Would I look at the Kawasaki as the unit to buy, or is there something else out there that I should look at first?
Oh, okay. Well, I don't like to say yes, definitely this one's the best, that one's the best. Not because it's a cop out, but because you experience different machines at different times in different places. It's hard to do an apples to apples thing, especially when now we're talking about a machine that's kind of in between classes in a brilliant way. But the Defender, the Ranger, the Kawasaki, they would all do the job. There are much smaller versions of machine than this. Obviously Kawasaki has the Mule line, but the Mules are more like a pure utility machine where like you have it, you've got a little trail around the property, so maybe you take it on a little trail loop. This thing is legitimately fun. So you can take this thing out and have a good time in it, like you could a Can-Am Defender, like the Ranger. So the one thing this doesn't have is like a smaller engine option. Like you can get Rangers and Defenders in smaller displacement machines that are a little bit less expensive. I haven't done a direct comparison in price as far as the Ridgeline versus the smaller Defenders and the Rangers and Defenders. But to kind of come back to it, one thing that stands out to me about this machine, and it can't discount it, like we typically as publications, and I can speak for all of us, when we have a lot of machines coming in and out, it's difficult for us to go out and put 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 miles on these machines for the terms of the loans that we get. So we go out and we try to just beat them hard, find the limits. One thing that really stands out on this unit is that it comes with a 3-year warranty from the factory. So a 3-year warranty, we see people in the comments and we see viewers that kind of complain about non-Japanese brands some. Now, I can say for a fact of my factual for my belief, Can-Am has made leaps and bounds over the past 10 years in durability and build quality. I'm not discounting the Polaris. I'm not saying it's unreliable. I just know that we see more complaints about non-Japanese machines.
So before I ask this question, 5.0 Magic, definitely lots of body roll at speed. He said it can be a little dangerous, but for his environment, he's not taking it in that. He's riding it in the Rocky Mountains. So it's acceptable, but in the high speed areas, the sway bar is definitely going to help you. What about the Chinese units that you've tested? Maybe in a smaller form utility, how are they holding up?
We really haven't done much with the Chinese side-by-sides, like CF Moto, and I think Highest Sun has one, or High Sun, however you pronounce it. We really haven't done anything with them yet. We will be with CF Moto at some point. They are very aware of us. We're very aware of them. That's coming. I know CF Moto is catching up on the 4x4 ATV side. My buddy Jeff, who was on last week with us, he's had a chance to get up close and personal with that new CF Moto 1000 utility ATV, and he's just like, man, when I ride that thing, if I closed my eyes, I didn't see the sticker of what brand it is, I would assume I was on a Japanese machine, and that's saying a lot. The coffee fairy showing up. So thank you.
Nice.
So I don't have an educated opinion on those yet. Verbiage is that there's a little work to be done. This is what I'm told, not my opinion. There's a little work to be done by CF Moto to get their build quality on their side-by-sides up to the level of some of the others. Just I've heard of, some breakage issues. That was more on a sport machine, though, not a sport utility. So I can't really say for sure.
Okay. I was kind of hoping that you had a little bit more info on those. I know that we have been talking about in the sport side some of the Chinese vehicles. So, I was kind of hoping that you had a better idea for that,
Well, I can't.
Yeah. I'm looking for a utility machine to help around the small property that I have here in Southern California. Nothing huge, I'm not looking for 92 horsepower or 116 horsepower. I'm looking for, just a little putt because I don't have a lot of.
Can-Am makes some 700s. Polaris has some 570s in that kind of work rec utility segment. So those would be, unless we get time to thrash on it, I don't want to lead people down to buying something that we can't recommend that because we haven't experienced it. So
okay. Yeah, I mean, I want to make a little workhorse truck out of it, that's going to have all my supplies on it, that I keep it under cover and, bring it out on the weekends. And when I'm doing some property maintenance or cutting some trees or things like that, it's a small property, but we can definitely do some stuff there. The ATV hustle, CF Moto needs some help with the styling. Looks so cheesy. But
and I wonder if he's talking more about the side-by-side machines or the ATV machines, and it's just, we can't all love the same girl. Like I might point out a girl, it's like, man, she's smoking, and some guy be like, she's a dog. What are you talking about? But the new CF Moto 1000 ATV that they have, like, just my personal opinion, and people are more than welcome to disagree. I think it looks cool. I mean, it looks stout. It looks muscular. But it doesn't look like a copycat machine, and it doesn't have that like overly stylized, like Chinese, like you have no clue what the American market wants kind of look. It looks beefy. And yeah, that's another show for another day. But I think that company's heading in the right direction, and everybody else better get scared.
Well, have you seen some of their motorcycles, some of the street bikes they're putting out? The different kind of looks. I mean, I don't even know how you want to categorize it. It's a street bike. It's not a touring bike. It's probably more something that's I would say closer to a little sporty short ride machine. I don't even know where you're categorizing that or how you would categorize it. But some of these motorcycles look pretty cool. I'd love to give them a try. There again, I have to, put my adult helmet on instead of my youthful deal. Got some answers in the chat. The CF motos are ugly. Laugh out loud. Side by side, the ATVs look okay. The ATV hustle, they still have that Chinese look. They're getting better though. I mean, it takes time for everybody to evolve. And, I agree. Some of their motorcycles still have that but we're okay. Are we looking for the American look in the Harley? Are we looking for the Japanese look? Or are we allowing them to have their own look?
And it takes time. It takes time for, CF Moto is big in the world market. They're getting bigger fast in the US market, but in the global market, they're big. I think it's kind of a learning curve on both sides. Like they're getting used to what the American market wants and what we expect. And at the same time, the American market, we're getting used to another player in the game that we haven't seen before. And, I got to kind of say, like, I'm not a big fan of all the big heavy cast aluminum wheels that I've seen on CF motos in the past. Like my opinion a couple of years ago of the brand, and Jeff is changing my mind a little bit because he's seen that new 1000. Traditionally I've kind of been like, yeah, you're getting these wheels and you're getting this winch and you're getting all this, at the same price as a base model from another manufacturer that doesn't come with all that. But do I really want those big, ugly, heavy cast aluminum wheels anyway that just add, 25, 30 pounds of rotating mass to the machine and make it a turd? Or do I want those light, aluminum wheels like come on a Grizzly 700 that help to maintain the maximum acceleration of the machine? As a performance guy, I don't want you to stylize the thing to the detriment of performance because, ATV, UTV on demand, we're kind of a performance brand. I typically don't care a whole lot about the rec utility machines. They don't get a ton of views because they're not enthusiast machines. Sport utility, that's a little different. Sport does great. I think they're going to evolve. They're going to be a real player, and not to jump into a totally another category, but it's like, if you look at CF Moto's new 1000 and everything it comes with, it's $10,000. The closest equivalent to it, unfortunately CF Moto yet doesn't have a single seater in an ATV at that displacement. But if you look at the equivalent, the Can-Am equivalent with a winch, with cast aluminum wheels, with painted plastic, two-seater, it's like $14,500. It's 45% more expensive. Which makes me sit here and do the math. Like, well, if a 450 dirt bike is 10 grand, and that means that CF Moto is going to be able to get me one at 6, sign me up. If it's even close, it doesn't even have to be as good. If it's close in performance, it's reliable. I don't need the performance of a 450 dirt bike. Yeah. We'll see. Fingers crossed.
Let's transition a little bit into sport 4x4s. We watched the pro 4x4 guys race with Brandon Frazier and Cody Collier and Landon Wolf and a couple of the other guys. And, you and I are both very impressed with these machines. Do you see Can-Am, Polaris, or any of the other manufacturers, bringing out a more sporty, racier 4x4 for the guy that doesn't necessarily want to ride a 450.
Outside of Can-Am, at this point, I'd say no. The Japanese, like if one of the Japanese were going to do it, we would expect it would be Yamaha. And Yamaha has been incredibly, like, there's already two people in the segment, and there was at the time, because, well, there is in sport utility, not in sport 4x4, because you have the Sportsman XP 1000, you've got the Outlander 1000, and then the Outlander's sport version of the Outlander, which is the Renegade, which is no racks, smaller plastic, lower profile plastic, essentially the same heart of the beast, chassis, suspension, well, not suspension, but chassis, engine, a little different shock tune. Polaris had the Scrambler XP 1000, and there were some guys that did pretty well on them. Team UXC was a factory Polaris team at one point. They had pretty good luck with them, but then Polaris sort of dropped that unit from the line, came out with the Scrambler S, which is, the Renegade's like 48, 49-inch wide machine with, 9.5 to 10 inches of travel front and rear, where that Scrambler S is 12.5 inches of travel in the front and 14 in the rear. It seems like Polaris just went, we don't want to play with Can-Am in this space. We're just going to kind of go do our own thing for a different demographic. Kind of like what Kawasaki did with the Ridge. They were like, maybe we just want to kind of do our own thing and stand out and be different. Yamaha's attitude, because we get a ton of comments on ATV On Demand, like, we want a Grizzly 1000. We want a Grizzly 850. We want a twin. And, years ago, it was cheap. I did a clickbait video, but it was kind of also not so much to be clickbait, but because I like to test interest in things, especially when I go and have discussions with manufacturers, like, why don't you build this? Because we were like, why don't you build a Grizzly 1000? I'm sure there's lots of customers out there who would like that Yamaha brand, that Yamaha brand that's known for a certain level of build quality. They like that. But Yamaha's just sort of like, there's not that many numbers in the segment. You've already got it split between two brands. Now you're going to divide it down again. We just don't think the numbers are big enough. And, I trust that. I might argue with companies all day long when it comes to sport quads and more of those, but when it comes to the sport utility 4x4 stuff, I'm gonna trust that they know the numbers a little bit better than me, and they're not just trying to have a cop out. So I think we're kind of where we are. CF Moto, and that was another discussion that was had, is people are requesting a lot. And that's one reason that I didn't jump sooner to try to get our brand to test one, is it's like, why are you only offering the 800 class and 1000 class machines in a two-seater? Because when I'm out on the trail in the United States, I don't see a lot of those. So I'm just like, can they ride them on the road in Europe? And that's why they prioritize the two-seater over the single-seater. Because looking at the U.S. market, I don't see the same demand for the two-seater as the single-seater. They're aware of the demand. There's kind of chatter that CF Moto will probably at some point be coming with a single-seater. And what's cool is their 1000 comes with shocks in their two-seat version, which is a sport utility machine, not a sport 4x4. It's got compression and rebound adjustable suspension from the factory. So if Can-Am could tighten up that wheelbase a little bit, make a single-seater version out of it, take the racks off, put some low-profile plastic, there's no reason they couldn't come out with a Renegade competitor for 10 grand, because they're offering a two-seater with racks and a big touch screen. I think it's got GPS on it mounted on the dash for 10 grand. So they could make a Renegade equivalent for less than 10 grand if they wanted to.
Probably closer to the 8,000 if you take off all the racks and the double seat and the big screen.
Right. I wouldn't balk at it at 9, especially if they came to the market. And the challenge for them, the big thing to them would be to be able to come out and go, look, yeah, we weigh 50 pounds more than that Can-Am, and we don't care because, I've talked to enough of these 4x4 racers and, like Rick Checo and that, and it doesn't matter if they were a Polaris guy or they're a Can-Am guy. Those units are torn down to the frame prior to the season starting. They're gusseted, some bolt-in stuff, some weld-in stuff. I've heard of guys tearing them back down at the summer break, going through the chassis again just to check it out, make sure it's holding up. CF Moto came out with a $9,000 to $10,000 version of a Renegade, and they just said, "Hey, we're 50 pounds heavier, and it's all in the frame. You can throw this thing off a cliff. You're not going to have to worry about it." Oh man, instant player. And their motor is now competitive because before, one of the things with CF Motos was like, yeah, you got a 1,000, but it's like 80 horsepower. Well, you're making 850 class horsepower out of your 1,000. Not anymore. Their 1,000's 90 horsepower. So I'm cautiously optimistic that they're going to do some really cool stuff in the next couple of years.
We're going to hit these 2 questions right here. Dave Ham said CF Moto, if they want to get a leg up on the 450 deal, they need to make a 3-wheeler. 450 3-wheeler. I don't think they have a 450 yet, but we would love to see a new 3-wheeler. They would need to get with TPC and make some frames. Go ahead and answer that.
I wouldn't bet $5 it's going to happen, but if anybody was going to do it at this point, it would have to be a company out of China or another Asian country, somewhere besides Japan or North America, because those guys haven't been hit with the lawsuits from the past from the 3-wheelers. I'm a 3-wheeler fan. I think the government needs to get out of our business and just let us ride what we want. If I can go, I'll say it, I don't care. If I can go wreck my body because of how I identify, I can ride whatever I want. Done. So sorry to get political. Can't help it.
Yeah, it's okay. 50 Magic wants ATV On Demand to invite Honda, Suzuki, and others to ride a YFZ 450R and a Raptor. I know he says he knows it's not realistic, but he would like to know the reaction.
What was his name?
50 Magic.
I wonder if me and 50 Magic have had that discussion, because I've literally been talking to somebody in YouTube comments. Again, names, it's hard to keep them all straight. I respond to thousands of comments a month. It seems like, yeah, that'd be fun too. Like, yeah, go to a Yamaha press event and then or get a unit and just invite the guys from there. Like, hey, why don't you just come play test rider? Like, you guys don't make one. Why do you care? It's not like you're promoting the competition, because you're not competition. So yeah, that would be tremendously entertaining. It brings me joy to think about it. It's like butterflies, just because any way I can rub it in their faces, I love it. Yeah, that would be great. That would be a lot of fun.
That would be. So, Joe, in our pre-conversation, you brought this up and pissed me off again and got me all upset and threw me off my whole game. Thank you for talking about the UTV market, which you know way more about than I do. But Supercross was last night, and I know that not everybody watches it. The people in the chat are probably groaning right now, thinking, "Oh, this isn't an ATV, UTV. Why are you talking about it?" But
because it's lifestyle. It's lifestyle because we like it. Just because.
Yeah, I love motorsports. I can't wait till MotoGP and F1 start, and then we'll be bringing those into the episode. And yes, Joe, you're going to become a MotoGP fan and an F1 fan, because I'm going to have to ask you questions about it.
Hey, just so you know, before we hit Supercross, it's like we're so much dirt bike fans. I mean, like, I started on 2 wheels. That's where it kind of all began. So I think And if you talk to a lot of ATV enthusiasts, a lot of racers like Corey Ellis, Gary Denton, we're talking some old names here, but a lot of us started on two wheels. And even though we kind of evolved into four, we still like them. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure that when the 2025s start to roll out, ATV On Demand is probably going to test a Kawasaki KLX 300. That was discussed at the Kawasaki event because, one of the main reasons it wasn't even reluctant, I happily kicked UTVs off of ATV On Demand's channel was because there's probably some crossover interest, but number one, they're very different. And because of riding style, riding technique, you don't ride a side by side, you drive it like a car. They're so different. Dirt bikes are much more like ATVs. You have to ride them. You have to have talent. You have to be in shape. They'll make you get in better shape. Like all the things that are great about an ATV, so much of them are similar to the dirt bikes. And one of the biggest things, and the reason that, I said to Kawasaki, let's just test that 300R, the dirt only version. Because there aren't a ton of sport quad offerings out here yet. We're working on it. We're working on a couple of manufacturers right now. One in particular, KO, which we talked about, and seeing what they've got with their 300. But I can't keep trying to push the ATV enthusiast to go buy a side-by-side. It's just so much more expensive. It's a totally different income demographic, having the ability to afford those things. So if we're going to take the time to kind of say, hey, there's not a lot of sport quads on the market right now. The ones that there are that are awesome, the 700 and the 450 from Yamaha, they're $10,000. If you're 16 years old, that's going to take some savings. That's going to take some time to build up that kind of money. That Kawasaki is $5,500.
Right.
So, a kid, like thinking back to my life as a young man, when I'm looking at machines like the KDX 200 from Kawasaki, a little bit more expensive, a little bit less expensive than the 252 stroke, motocross bikes at the time, or the RMX 250 at the time. It's half the cost of a KX 450. I'm sure it's not half the fun, especially out in some tight woods, banging off some bark, doing some enduro style riding. So love dirt bikes. We're going to test one because, hey, if you wish you could get a sport quad, there's none out there. Me personally as an ATV guy, I'm looking to two wheels before I'm looking to the cage. That's just me as an ATV guy.
I've been telling everybody this for years. I have scheduled a time to go ride a KTM 300. So
nothing but good.
We will be having a video on our YouTube channel and a review on the KTM 300. I'll break down the year and the whole 9 yards. But yes, we've already scheduled a time to go take it out for a day and ride it and bring it back with, maybe with some bumps and bruises, but hopefully not. Hopefully I'll be able to keep it on two wheels. But last night was Arlington Supercross, and Jet Lawrence freaking totally floundered and threw it away. I'm so pissed. But he's young. He's a rookie. And Cooper Webb did exactly what he was supposed to. He wasn't even pressuring Lawrence when Lawrence failed. That's what I'm so worried about is did Lawrence lose concentration? What happened? Because then he fell off again, trying to make up the ground to pass Webb on the last lap.
That track last night was just taking its toll. I know you said you didn't watch the 250s, but it happened in the 250s. The same thing. I think Faulkner is his last name. Austin, I believe, is his first name. Somebody in the chat chastised me if I'm wrong.
He went down hard, man.
Oh God. Like it was one of the worst crashes I've seen in Supercross. I mean, like I'm a part-time stuntman for non-professionally, taking a lot of falls and a lot of hits in my life, just through martial arts and demonstrations and being slammed through tables and off of things and onto the floor. And this guy, I mean, oh God, it was terrible. You watched him straight splat on the concrete, and it's just like, oh my God. Like me and my wife were just sitting there like, it was petrifying to watch. Like it hurt to watch it. Um, I hope he's okay. I haven't seen what the injury report was. He got up with help and walked to
The
whatever
UTV.
that UTV Gator, whatever it is, to get a ride back to the mobile medical unit. But oh my God, what a horrible thing to see.
Yeah.
It was total cringe. Um, hope he's okay. But and then Deegan inherited, he was right there back just a little bit in the second. And he took the win for Yamaha. And that was the same thing that happened in the 450s. Like that track was just taking its toll because the rhythm sections were tough. The timing was tough. And yeah, you saw a number of get offs through the night from that track.
You know who I was most impressed with? Eli Tomac.
I was going to say it had to be Eli Tomac because that dude went from like at the beginning of the race, it's like, oh man, he's
He
going
went from 11th. He went from 11th to second.
Yeah.
Obviously with Jet Lawrence throwing it away, but still, whether he inherited or not, that guy earned the ride of the night because watching him, even when he made a mistake in the rhythm, I don't know if you caught that during the closing in on the end of the laps, he's gaining on Plessinger and makes a mistake and still makes the time, even though he made a mistake in the rhythm. He just adapted and kept the pace going, and it was like he never made a mistake. Super strong. I was a little worried when he did get off that, he's older, he's going to just stop and quit riding. And no, he got aggressive, came out strong. I am an Eli Tomac fan, not to the level of some of the other guys, but I'll tell you, I was disappointed in Saxton. I thought he should have rode harder and rode better, and he didn't. He faded. Roxon didn't.
It's hard to say what's going on. Maybe it wasn't his track. Maybe the bike setup was off. I tend to like not look at the athletes and go, they weren't trying. Because I don't think any of those guys ever go out there and not try. Actually, there is one guy right now who I'm wondering if he's not trying. There's only one, and that's Barsha. Because they say he's struggling with the gas with the chassis on it. The KTMs went to a much stiffer frame, and there was a lot of battling with it. I think that's something that Plessinger was having issues with last year. I watched Gypsy Tales and a lot of dirt bike stuff, and KTM has a couple different versions of their 450. I think they have two different frames. Anyone can chastise me if I'm wrong. I don't claim to be an expert.
So what I've heard is the KTM gets the modern stuff, then Husky gets the second, the year prior, okay, and then Gas gets 2 years. So the Gas is 2 years behind, and yeah, KTM was struggling a couple years ago. So now Barsha's got that struggle. I'm sure he's frustrated because they won't give him the modern frame.
Yeah, and it's
with me, I'd go buy the painted red. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just saying with production rules, they probably can't. Like you would think, like, why don't they just give him a KTM frame? It's pretty much the same bike. I don't know how much they've changed the geometry between the KTM and the gas chassis, if they've changed it at all. But I think I remember hearing something about KTM because they have a couple different versions of the 450. I think there's like a higher level, like a pro version or an A version or something. And I thought I heard that had a little different chassis than the base model. Don't take that to the bank. But it sounded like KTM was getting their stuff straight, and apparently that's not trickling down to the gas team. So
I think that it actually hurts their sales if they don't fix that, because you got a guy like Barsha has a huge fan following, and you're not going to get the sales to the gas, because of that. You know, um, I, I don't know. That's just what I would assume, that if they don't fix it, it's going to hurt them, and they're going to lose in the long run.
Well,
How
they're going to fix it, but I don't, again, like, Jeremy McGrath hated his 97 CR250 to the point that he wanted to get off of a Honda. I had a 97 CR250. I didn't hate it at all. I thought it was a great turning bike. Like, it turned so good. It was intuitive, but I don't ride at that level where I want some extra flex from the chassis to help take the edge off the bike, to help soften things up a little bit, because I don't ride that hard. So I think it was last year, a year before Gas, I think, won the MXA shootout, or some of the guys actually preferred, and that might be wrong, but they preferred the Gas over the KTM because it had a little more flex in the swing arm, and some other bits.
You're talking about that year gap thing. As KTM was struggling, Gas had the good parts. They had the platform that was working better. And I hear the Husky guys are struggling with the machine as well, because it's not working the way they want it to. So that's all outside rumor. I don't have a real good inside line to a lot of this stuff. So I mean, I try to get more ties to it, but I was just really frustrated with Jet Lawrence. I know he still got the point lead, but Cooper Webb's right there in second. Aaron Plessinger closed up, in the points as well. That I'm happy for, other than the fact Aaron rides an orange bike. Eli Tomac moved up in the points. Unfortunately, Saxton and Roxton both didn't move forward. They moved backwards. But you got to look to those Yamahas. They've done their homework. Those are good machines. The Honda seems to be a good machine, because the Lawrence brothers have kept them up into the front. And KTM has fixed their issues. That old Suzuki that Roxon's on is not a bad motorcycle. So if you're looking for a bike that maybe you don't need a push button for, go out and check that Suzuki out. I bet you it's a nice machine.
Yeah, when Corey was on with us a couple of weeks ago, he changed my attitude about it, because I was kind of sitting there thinking, like, what a stud Kenny must be to be out here doing as good as he's doing on a 2016, or 2017. But then you start listening to things that they say about it, like it peaks earlier in the RPM range, therefore it has good low end. It has a little bit more of an old school 4-stroke characteristic, aka traction. It's a razor sharp turning bike, which is obviously a huge benefit in Supercross, where all the turns are tight. So I gotta, if I was gonna go buy a new 450 today, I'm not afraid to kick a bike. I got huge calves, not scared to kick. I'd probably consider that bike, just because it turns good. If you can turn fast, it makes you feel fast. And it sounds like it actually has a really good power delivery for the average guy who, like me, who probably has no business on a 450 anyway. So,
hey, did you hear in the commentation when they were talking about Eli Tomac last night that Star Yamaha took him to Florida, and they've been working on corner exiting speed with him?
I did, yeah.
So you got a guy that's as developed as Eli Tomac, even goes back to the basics to get schooling on areas that he may be lacking or probably haven't been working on. That's what I love about some of the professional guys, even like Hetrick and Weenan and Ford, some of these other guys. They're always going to school. Where can I get better? Where can I get better? Out of everybody that rides, Hetrick spends more time on the machine, I think, than everybody. But that's why he's probably the best guy in the world right now on an ATV.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if when they were talking about that Eli was going back and working on corner exit speeds, I didn't know how much they were talking about his technique and how much they were talking about just bike development, and probably both.
Yep. Because he's huge into wanting to develop the machine and to take the time with the techs to make the machine better and better and better. Plus, I'm sure he's working on his skill set. Do you think that he's 100% healthy with that leg?
I've never blown an Achilles tendon off my heel, so I don't know. He certainly doesn't look to be struggling too much. We're going from 11th to 2nd. So yeah.
What I did notice is after he got up, it's like he took a breath, relaxed. It took him almost a half a lap to get back to speed. And then once he got to speed, he just kept getting faster and faster and faster. He was the fastest guy on track at the end of that race.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of his. Mountain biking is kind of like number one pastime outside. Once I get out of power sports, I can't say I never pull the cameras out for mountain bike stuff, because I do from time to time. I don't do it full time, and I just tinker with it enough to where I can make mountain biking affordable for me. But back in the day, I was a big fan of his old man, John Tomac. He's a former national champion, probably world champion. It's not surprising when your dad is a, elite level world-class mountain biker, you've got the genetics to be a cardiovascular monster. So, it's not surprising to see him have that success and have that ability to push that hard, because it's in his genetics.
I read a little article that said that Eli didn't beat his dad on the mountain bike until he got into the 450s. So you got to figure, how old was he? How old was his dad? And for your dad to still be whooping your butt and you're into your 20s, deeper into them, you're past 25 and you're still not beating your dad. That just tells you what a dominant athlete and the skill set that his father has to ride and beat his son at the sport. Yes, it's his dad's sport, but still, Eli's got phenomenal talent on two wheels.
Oh yeah, I mean, for sure. But it's funny, you see a lot of people in mountain biking. Like, there's a lady here in town, and she's 63 years old, and I wouldn't want to race her. Just mountain biking is a sport that you're seeing people older and older doing it, and they can ride hard. So yeah, I don't know what to say.
Once you get your lungs expanded and get over the sore butt, it's so much fun. I mean, a few years back when I started mountain biking, I lost a bunch of weight. Really enjoyed it. The downhill portion I hated because I always crashed, but that's just because I have no skill. But we'll get over that. Sure. Joe, I want to thank you so much for an amazing conversation. Thank you for the update in the UTV industry. We'll come back and cover it again later on in the year, and you can give us an update on some of those sport utility machines, and maybe you'll have picked a utility machine that I can get my hands on and do some work with.
Well, now that I know you're in the market for a entry-level rec utility machine, I will keep my eyes peeled and see if we can come up with a recommendation for you.
Remember, I have no skills, and it needs to be low horsepower so that I do not get myself in trouble.
We know a lot of these new vehicles, the Kawasaki included, is they have a thing called work mode, or in the Yamaha's case for the RMAX, crawl mode, where you can sit there and just smack the gas pedal, but the reaction to that is super muted, super delayed, to where it's almost difficult to get yourself in trouble. So, and the last thing I'd like to say about the ridge that I didn't cover was, at least not as much as I wanted to, was when we started that ride day, it's 40 degrees, it's cold, and it's like going into the event, or like, oh, West Virginia in February, like this is going to be cold and shivery and miserable. And, you know, I hung out with Matt Lester from Dirt Tracks TV a lot. We're buddies. We hang out at the events quite a bit. We've developed a friendship over the years. He's a great dude. You know, we rode together quite a bit throughout the day, and it's like morning, we're in that thing. We got the heat on. It's 40 outside. It's 73 in the cab. It was great. After, you know, we hit a few mud holes, and it was like all the things that I want to chastise the UTV guys for, like, oh, you're in that cab, you're soft. Yeah, we hit a mud hole, splashes all up over the cab. You hit the windshield washer button, turn on the wiper, clean windshield. You look down at your jacket and you're like, I can still wear this jacket to dinner tonight because there's no dirt on it. Afternoon, sun comes out, beating through the cab. Now we're baking. Now it's like it's hot. Oh, turn on the air conditioner. Oh, it's 73 in the cab again, and no jackets. And dust started happening in the afternoon. And it's like, oh, it's dusty. Well, at least when I take a shower after the end of this ride, I won't be blowing out nose boogers. So, you know, or dirt mud boogers. So on one hand, it's like, yeah, I like to call those guys soft, but when you get out there in a climate controlled enclosed cabin, you're still having a good time, and you know, no muddiness, no dirtiness. Yeah, I didn't hate it. It was actually a really cool experience. So
I hope my wife doesn't watch this episode, because that's the kind of UTV that I'll end up with.
oh, she'd love it. She'd love it. Don't let her watch it, or you'll have to buy one.
Right on, right on. Thanks again, Joe. You have a wonderful day. Definitely, we're going to have to work on your attire for the show.
Oh, I'm full of sarcastic comments.
Yes, you are, but not on here. You're not, thank God. But as always, what a pleasure, and thank you so much, Joe, for the updates on the UTVs. And we'll be with you next week.
Well, yeah, guys, thanks for listening to us talk about cages.
All right, everybody. Have a great weekend. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.